Good afternoon and welcome to the Southwest Creative Technology Network's launch of our final report, Bees, Robots and Lights. My name is Melissa Blackburn. I'm a white woman with long dark hair, a fringe and gold earrings, and I'm a knowledge exchange manager at the University of the West of England. As many of you will know, the Southwest Creative Technology Network is funded by Research England's Connecting Capability Fund, and it's a project which aims to increase the use of creative technologies across the Southwest. We are a partnership between the University of the West of England, the University of Plymouth, Falmouth University, Bath University, Watershed here in Bristol, and Kaleider in Exeter. Today's event is a chance to hear from the partners in the programme about how Switching has changed the way those organisations work, where they work, and the people they work with. Just before we start, we're aiming for this event to run about 2 till 4 today, with a 5-minute break in the middle, and there will be BSL and captioning throughout. Allow me to introduce Professor John Dovey, who's Professor of Screen Media at UE, and he's also Director of the Southwest Creative Technology Network.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon and welcome to the launch of our lovely report, which exists in hard copy as well as online as a PDF. And I urge you to download it and have a look because it's full of goodness. Welcome to our event this afternoon. I'm immensely proud of this document because I suppose in one way, it represents for me a trace of all the great work that the team has done in the last 3 years. But also, I hope that it lays down a marker for other people who want to understand something about how creative industries and creative technology can drive regional development in interesting ways. So as Melissa kindly said, I'm John Dovey and I'm a white man in his 60s, blonde hair, big dark frame glasses, sitting in my study at home, mandatory books behind me for an academic study, and broadcasting from Bristol. And it's been my great pleasure and privilege to be the director of this Southwest Creative Technology Network programme for the last 3 and a bit years. And it really has been one of the best projects that I've ever worked on. It's been an absolutely brilliant experience. And I think one of the things that I wanted to start off talking about is the creative part of the Creative Technology Network name. This has been a joyful experience, which has allowed creative people to experiment. We've produced a really exciting and actually incredible mixture of creative projects, which has been fun to do. Our project partners have, for instance, immersed people in an array of audio speakers so they can swarm audio for immersive effects. They've given people AR experiences that were driven by birdsong. We've used motion capture to make dance-based falls prevention programs for older people. Our partners have made inflatable robots. They've made 3D cameras that can scan a room much cheaper than the other tools on the market to democratize these new capture techniques. They've made apps to support men's mental health that use the idea of the weather as an interface. They've made crowd management tools for big tourist attractions like the Eden Project. They've made databases that challenge the cultural biases that get put into the AI systems that we're all going to be dependent on in the next few years. And of course, they've looked at the waggle dance in bees, using AI in order to find out where they've been making honey and then helping school kids plant seeds in those places that will support the bees' future survival. Just everywhere you look in this project, there are amazing examples of creativity being used to make products and services that will improve the world in all kinds of different ways. It's brought artists, entrepreneurs, academics, and businesses together to make better futures and to create enterprise and jobs. So it's important to remember that doing this kind of work should actually be fun. We love to do this work and we love to share it with one another. And we love to get that creative energy going where people are collaborating and enjoying one another's company, one another's ideas, generating excitement that you get from sharing visions and possibilities with one another. These connections and their continuity will be our most important legacy. And it's not something that you can put down in a book. Of course, there were some serious questions behind all of this fun that we had and a serious investment of taxpayers' money. One of our many challenges was to make universities, or to help universities, I should say, become a key force in building new capacity for innovation across the region. Now, it's an acknowledged route in innovation theory that we support clusters, and we support clusters that operate in different industrial sectors. And clusters are identified as those collection of enterprises and people that develop over time. They develop capital resources, shared expertise, shared markets, and shared networks of talent. So in our world, in the creative industries, clusters have been identified in this kind of analysis in London, Bristol, Manchester, Glasgow, all as places that has the potential to lead the world. However, but this focus on clusters also begs the question, well, who's left out? What are the edges of that cluster? How do enterprises and creative people and artists working in the geographical and social margins gain visibility in those essential networks? So Josh Seaport, for instance, at Sussex University has recently published work around the idea of microclusters, those smaller groupings without the kind of intensity that you get in the big cities, built around things like animation or games or crafts or fashion, which exist outside the already existing networks in many smaller towns and cities all over the country. So in our program design, we asked, how do you bring in different people to a creative cluster? How do you increase the impact of a cluster like Bristol and Bath across a whole region? And we used a methodology that we call cultural ecology, which you can find more about in the report, especially in the excellent evaluation section at the back, if I might say so. So we created the SWCTN project, our ethos and our design against the backdrop of these questions. We asked, how can we best build new capacity across the Southwest by bringing together a new partnership across the region? And this partnership was very much outward facing. Although universities were the anchor partners, we funded more new talent fellows and industry partners than we did academics. And one of the great joys of this project, I think, was the common ground occupied by all the media arts departments in all the universities that we worked with, who understood themselves as part of the innovative resource for their wider regions. So together with our great production partners at Kaleider in Exeter and Watershed in Bristol, we set about putting together diverse talents, skill sets, and networks of people, funding them to think, to research, to design, to collaborate, and then investing in them to make prototypes, relationships, and businesses. First of all, then, we built capacity through forming new collaborations and new networks where inspiration, resources, and ideas are swapped and trust is built. The capacity is in connecting the talent to one another and to resources. Finally, we tried to do all this in a spirit of inclusive innovation. Now, we may not always have succeeded. Like everything we do, it's an iterative process of experimentation. But as the program has progressed, it's become obvious that the practice of innovation has to align itself with the great cultural shift of decolonization, which, in my view, alongside climate, has become one of the most urgent political challenges of our time. What that means for our creatives, our businesses, and our technologists is that we have to be developing future projects, future tools, and future visions that are for everyone, that are designed and built through an inclusive process, so that all kinds of users and communities can see themselves in the futures that we help to design. We know, don't we, by now, all too well what happens if we let old white men who look like me design our futures. We finished up with Zuckerberg and Google in their crazy plans to lock us into their metaverse, their virtual world where we can retreat from reality, or the equally mad visions of Jeff Bezos and Peter Thiel planning new colonizations of Mars for themselves when we succeeded in making this planet irretrievably broken. This is escapist nonsense and the worst kind of science fiction. What we need is real tools for change for real people in the real world. So we intensified our attempts to change the way that we get things done and redoubled our attempts to take proper account of the different needs of diverse talents to make a better future. This is an ongoing challenge for all the institutions of research and development in the UK, for the universities, for the UKRI, the Research Funding Councils, and for Innovate. And it's one that I'm certain we'll hear more about as the work of developing inclusive innovation practices develops over the next 10 years. Of course, I have a massive list of thanks at this point in our collaboration. I want to really say thank you to all of the people that gave their time and their energy and their goodwill and their imagination and their joy to make this network a success. The teams at Falmouth, Plymouth, Exeter, in Kaleider, Bath University, University of the West of England, and Watershed in Bristol. Each university had its own academic leads, some of whom you're going to meet this afternoon, and a team of knowledge exchange specialists led by our knowledge exchange supremo, Tom Trewella, who you'll hear from later as well. And we also had a team of wonderful creative producers who led our whole process and held it together. So I want to say particular thanks to them as well, to Hannah Brady, Charlie Tapp, Melissa Blackburn, and Jaslyn Pinkney. I also want to thank the team who put our lovely report together, Liz Roberts, Josh Sandin, Tom Trewella, and Jess Connett, and Jill Wildman for our business development support. And also thanks go out to Fern Dunn and Susie King and Melissa Blackburn, who have worked hard pulling the event together today. You've all been a delight to work with, and please, let's do it again sometime really soon. And on that note, of course, massive thanks to Research England, our funding partner, who are really great to work with. I hope that at least some of us have the opportunity to work with you again in the not too distant future. If you want to know more about our inputs, results, and methods, please do download the report, because it's a bumper annual full of goodness for anyone thinking about place-based creative economy development. During the rest of the afternoon, you're going to be seeing some of the different kinds of impacts that we've made on the different partners and places that we've been working in. You'll see, I hope, that there's an enormous variety in the networks that we supported, and that is the point of the design this afternoon. A successful creative ecosystem thrives on difference. The dancers, the puppeteers, the activists, the filmmakers, the critics, the engineers, the data wranglers, the storytellers, and the roboticists are all part of the ecosystem that we want to support. The capability for the region is precisely in the interconnectedness of this difference. The short film that follows will give you, I think, a flavour of the rich mix that was the Southwest Creative Technology Network. Thanks, I hope you enjoy your afternoon.
We are just genuinely a real outsider team. I'd only been doing robotics for 2 years since I got the fellowship from the Southwest Creative Technology Network. I think the creativity is really important when it comes to technology because we look at things in ways that are different to the ways that technologists would. Instead of being product-driven, we're quite often problem-driven. So we look at the world around us and we wonder how that could look in the future and the different ways in which we can impact that.
You know, we're artists. It's an idea that we want to make, and we've been excited about it for a while. It's sort of been a while in development. It's great to get this opportunity, this grant, to actually push it forward to the next step. It has a range of applications. I mean, it can be used in theatre, it can be used in retail spaces, it can be used, I think it could be used as a real-time sort of next-generation DJ tool where you're actually creating spatial atmospheres, sonic atmospheres, and ambient soundscapes on the fly and in real time.
Data Duopoly is a company that's based down in Cornwall on a mission to revolutionise the visitor experience at any venue worldwide.
Through the finance that SWCTN gave us, it meant that we could hire our lead developer for a full-time 6-month contract, which was really beneficial for us because our founding team doesn't have the technical capabilities.
What we were able to do is build a start of our smart algorithm, which automatically knew where everyone is and sends them to the least busy areas and updates them on what's happening in real time.
So they sort of gave you this bursary and said, you know, we sort of trust you to get on and do, you know, create and do what you want to do. And obviously there was support and guidance along the way, but it was just very sort of liberating to have, you know, a sort of organisation, a group of people believing in you, supporting you, and sort of trusting you to get on and deliver good work.
This funding has been absolutely instrumental, pivotal in me being able to realise finally this dream of having products or a space where people can collectively, you know, be responsible for their data and not only be responsible for it, but also have that being a gateway to a new sort of relationship with their data and with big tech companies.
You know, quite a few things I wasn't able to do because of the pandemic. Like I wasn't really able to do group activities, but I'm actually doing that now. It's sometimes really beneficial to have that long period of time leading up to something and then actually get to do it. So I feel like it kind of laid the foundations to quite a substantial series of work that I'm now, you know, really engaged with.
I don't think I ever really had a meaningful artist statement before SWCTN. I think it was always just forced to do it and you made it up. And my sentence of how I work with automation and work with alternative bodies probably took the entirety of like the SWCTN process. And then a year almost afterwards to decompose just exactly what it is I do. But I feel now I can confidently stand in a room of artists and actually justify what my work is, why I do it, and what its meaning is.
Our project is to use AI cameras to decode the bees' waggle dance so we can understand more about where the bees are foraging for their food. And we're creating seed packet recipes to address any floral gaps, not just for the honeybees, but for all the other wild insects and pollinators as well. Anyone can get involved. You get access to all the beehives, all the kit, the knowledge. We have honey shares, so everyone gets an equal share. We will be offering training, and then eventually each beehive location will have a beekeeper and a beekeeping group, and everyone's got beehives.
Air Giants and our work stands out in the market because throughout our research we haven't found anyone working with this particular combination of technologies. Part of the joy of working on this prototype was that across our team we've got incredibly diverse skills. So that's around software design and aesthetic design and fabrication and robotics and beyond. It's phenomenal, and I think it takes a team of that breadth to make a project like this happen. And I think that we've really pulled off something great. Who doesn't love giant robots?
Thank you very much, John. Watershed and UWE are both based in Bristol, and they've been a key creative hub for the Southwest. Bristol is a key creative hub for the Southwest. Tom Trewella is from UWE, he's a Senior Knowledge Exchange Manager. And Farah Harasani is Watershed's research lead, and they're both here to tell us more about the work they did on SWCTN.
Thanks, Melissa. Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Trella. I have close cropped dark hair. I've got a beard and dark glasses, and I'm sat in front of a fairly neutral white background. I'm wearing a black jumper. Yeah, that's probably enough. Sorry, I had a very well-bred introduction, but actually seeing that film has made me feel quite emotional. It's a lovely to see it all together at once. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit around, I guess, my insights of the work in Bristol, particularly focusing on the University West of England, who's my employer, and for I was going to talk a bit about the work in Bristol around the sort of lens of the Watershed, their employer. So I've tried to do this by answering 4 big questions about the changes that I've seen as a result of working on the South West Creative Technology Network. So the first one is on this slide, which is, how did South West Creative Technology Network enhance and grow the network around Watershed and around UWE in Bristol? Next slide, please. So just, I guess I presented this slide in our dry run the other day, and I had some questions about, is it meant to look like that? And the answer is yes, it is. That is aesthetics. So if anything else looks odd, or if I say anything else weird, that's also aesthetics. So Watershed and UWE has a long-term collaboration around creative tech. Both organisations invest in Pervasive Media Studio, which has in turn housed a major programme of collaborative work. Between us, we've brought together communities, worked with them to produce new thoughts and new things, and help them make those things and those thoughts stick into the world beyond the studio. This thing you can see here is Studio 5, which I'm also sat in now today. That was a new bit of Watershed, which houses the Creative Economy Lab, which didn't really exist before South West Creative Technology Network. So a very real change in UWE has been the creation of the the Creative Economies Lab, sorry, and the housing of it down here in Studio 5 in Watershed. I guess to me, the benefit of the South West Creative Technology Network has been that it looked to answer the question, so what? So what that you have a long-term creative collaboration? So what does that mean in the context beyond Bristol? So UWE and Watershed have worked with partners beyond Bristol many a time, but this project was a real place-based attempt to see if any of this way of working had any juice beyond Bristol and beyond that collaboration. I guess it looked to see how we could work together across the Southwest to create something new around creative tech. And for the bid, we thought about the Southwest through the lens of 6 partners across 5 cities and the network they could draw together, the network in those cities, around those cities, and in the corridor and spaces between those cities. So looking back now, what is sort of 4 years on from when we put the bid together, I think we partially achieved this. I think the focus in the places between the cities is a little bit less than we'd all hoped. There are some real notable cold spots across the Southwest, but at least we now know where they are, even if we don't really know why they look like cold spots to us. I guess there's also some real questions about the notion of place that we're all keen to understand further. When we talk about a place, where is the network in a place? What does that mean? Does that mean the place that people live? The place that people in the network work, where they create, where they feel like they belong to? And I guess for me, this is a really even more important question, because it just feels like we've all spent 18 months existing in a no place, in a flat virtual window that looks out onto 100 other cobbled together at-home workspaces. In terms of what SWCTN has done to the creative networks in orbit around UWE, I think the best thing about the project has been that it's challenged those creative networks in the best way. It's challenged us to explain our work better. It's challenged us and the way we bring people into the network and who we bring in. It's challenged our approach to IP. Who gets to own this stuff? Who gets to exploit this stuff? It's challenged to explain what we mean in better and clearer words and to provide better evidence about what we've done. We're going to talk a bit about how much amazing stuff you've all achieved today. But we really hope that in that report, you will see we've done some real work around gathering evidence to persuade even the most hardened of skeptic that this project was really great, and not just because we say so. And Liz and all the other researchers who've worked in the team, Nicole and Simon, really thank for gathering that evidence. So I feel that the academics in UWE and the networks focused around PM studios are now stronger in terms of their practice, of being able to talk about their values and the value of the work that they do, and more able to make their work change the world beyond Bristol. Can I have my next slide, please? Oh, thanks. So my next slide is about what productive relationships do I see now that I didn't see before? So I guess the glib answer is loads, like many different ones. I think seeing all the amazing outputs from SWCTN and the strength and breadth of the network has shown to me how much we stand to gain from each other and how much we really need each other to make those big innovative leaps. I think for me personally, it's helped me understand my practice around knowledge exchange, and especially how that sits in terms of and working with researchers, working with creative producers, and working with Jill on her amazing work around business development, and how knowledge exchange and creative production and business development are distinct and that they have overlaps, and how those three different disciplines work together to really support a network in the ways it was needed. I guess I'll go to my next slide, please. Thanks. I guess what stands out for me really is the feedback from people outside of the network about how much they've gained from interacting with SWCTN. There's lots of good feedback to choose from, and again, it's in the report. But I'm going to briefly read from, I think, my favourite bit of feedback that I received. So this is from Professor Farid Dalami, who's the manager of the Robotics Innovation Facility at the Bristol Robotics Laboratory. We sent a bunch of our fellows and some of our other people from our network to work them on a couple of courses around robotics, just to see, because there was a real demand and desire to understand robotics, and Bristol Robotics Lab is hosted by UE, and we want to see how that works. And it worked really, really well. And the feedback we got, I'll just read to you now. So these are his words. These individuals brought a fresh perspective into our workspace, asking questions we've not been asked before and suggesting novel hardware applications we've not previously considered. It was innovation in action, giving us a valuable opportunity to consider their unique requirements, ambitions, and perceptions of technology, alongside those of our usual engineering, manufacturing, and high-tech clients. There is no doubt that this broadened our capacity for considering the art of the possible. So I think that final bit, broadening engineers' capacity for considering the art of the possible, broadening others' perspectives through the way the network members have worked and worked with them, that's a really great takeaway. Can I have my next slide, please? So what impacts has SWCTN had on my understanding of my role in my own city region? So this is pretty near and dear to me. I came back to Bristol because of this role. So Bristol as a place and this role are really tied together for me. For me, it's really reinforced the need for a generalist. I always said on this project, can I have the next slide, please? Thanks. I always said that I was a tea tray. I have expertise across a bunch of areas, but only very shallow in any one of them. This is fine until I started meeting the rest of the fellows and the broader network. So all our fellows came here because they are an expert in at least one, and in some cases, many separate areas. So the clash between a tea tray and these experts created some real fear. But over the course of the project, I think I coalesced this into a positive. Being a generalist is a helpful thing. It lets me say, I don't understand that. Can you please explain that to me differently? Or it sounds like you're describing a thing that's a bit like this. Is it? Do you know other people who are doing work like that? I found that I had just enough knowledge to contribute, but also plenty of non-knowledge or anti-knowledge to bring out discussion, to help people talk through what they're saying, to make odd connections. I still don't think I'm going to add not really understanding anything too deeply or being a tea tray to my CV, but it was definitely a useful thing here. Bristol, UE, PM Studios, and the wider network is bristling with people who know what they're talking about, even if it takes someone who is a tea tray to bring it out of them. Being an engaged tea tray helped them to refine how they talked about their work, how their work could connect to the world, and allowed them to talk to someone who really wants them to lead and be the expert. And seeing all the different successes that spun out of the network really makes my heart swell. You've bought into the network because of your expertise, and you all leave better. Some have got new things, some have got new businesses, but everyone has got new ideas. And I hope through this work and the evidence of the good work that UE and the others have done, that everyone sees the value in supporting generalists, facilitators, and people who make things happen. Can I have my last slide, please? Sorry, my penultimate slide. That's great, thanks. And how has it changed the way I'll work in the future? Talked a lot about the present and the past. Let's talk about what's next. So working with the project has really changed my work in a couple of key areas. Firstly, talking to fellows and people who applied and didn't become fellows has given me a real empathy for the process of applying for something like this. To think really carefully about how our processes and activities can exclude and can isolate, even if that's not our intent. Speaking to colleagues, network members, and those who couldn't join or didn't want to join our network really changed my understanding of how you should welcome people in, how you keep them engaged, how you listen attentively, and how you are mindful of how they leave a network like this. It also helped me think about labels and the power of how you design things. When we set out, academic and industry felt like really distinct areas, much like the different places felt like distinct areas. But a lot of our academics are part-time. A lot of our industry talent teach and research. The boundaries between those are less clear than we'd like them to believe, but the ripples of these naming decisions really resonated throughout the project. So I guess it also really reinvigorated my interest in place, especially following, as I said earlier, the fact we haven't really had a place for the last 18 months. What does place mean? How does it bring people together who can't come or who can't contribute to a physical or virtual space? And I think finally, looking at the future, it's reaffirmed my faith in collaboration and patience. So much of what's emerged from SWCTN is a beautiful halfway house of the planned and the carefully curated emergent. Some of the things that are now in the world were there in the minds and the pictures of the network from day one, and some of them none of us could imagine. We need space for chaos and space for the unexpected. And for those of us running projects, we need to defend the need for these spaces for the unexpected, the risky, the unfocused, and the creative. Innovation is a word which is thrown around a lot. Now, my last slide, please. Thanks. But innovation means newness, and newness means smashing risky stuff together. Innovation means you don't know what you're going to come out with. So you need to keep trying to find new ideas from new people in new configurations. The dice must roll. The route to a natural 20 is through throwing these die over and over. We need to do risky things, but in a risk-aware way. The importance of this space and in helping people leave that space if they hit on something with potential is something that we as people who run projects and fund work need to continue to make the case for. So that is the end of me. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Farara.
Thank you so much, Tom. Hello, everyone. I am Faraha Asani, and I am the research lead at Watershed. Can I just ask for my first slide to be brought up? Thank you so much. So I'm just going to describe myself really quickly. I'm a Black woman of mixed heritage. I have a Black afro that comes up to just above my shoulders. I'm wearing Black-rimmed glasses, a green top, and also a leopard print scarf around my neck because it's quite cold in my apartment. So I think winter is really upon us, or autumn, or one of either of them. The approach that I'm going to take with my presentation today is to share 3 of the main learnings that we kind of came up with or received from being part of the SWCTN collaborative. So I will be referring to Southwest Creative Technology Network by its abbreviation, which is SWCTN. And can I please ask for my next slide to be rolled on? Thank you so much. So these learnings are, first of all, the importance of a community of practice. So Pervasive Media Studio houses a lot of talented people. Some of them are academics, some of them are individuals who have taken different routes of becoming researchers, of becoming knowledge producers. And it's really important that in the studio, we respect and treat everyone as a producer of knowledge and also as an intellectual leader in their own right. And so to form this community of practice, we brought together artists, makers, producers with academics, and just kind of got along and collaborated. But I will get into more detail into that in a couple of minutes. The second thing I want to highlight is that we've always been asking ourselves how the role of a producer evolves with time and through the different collaborations that we take part in. And we recognize, as John stated earlier, that it is an iterative process. But I won't get into too much detail with the role of a producer, as Katie Keeler from Kaleider will be covering this later on. And the last, but definitely not the least thing that I want to highlight today is our commitment and our determination to move beyond just having good intentions to actually changing things in structures and in systems where we have power and some influence. And one of the main ways that we're hoping to do this is by openly and honestly accepting the critique that we have received as part of the SWCTN kind of design team, and taking those recommendations on board and embedding them into the further work that we're planning to do, perhaps in another phase of SWCTN or in the different research collaborations that we happen to be a part of. So can I please have my next slide? Thank you. So going into a little bit more detail about what we mean by community of practice, we worked with artists, creative technologists, freelancers, creative businesses, and SMEs, brought them together with academics and industry figures. And I want to say that I totally recognize that all of these individuals and organizations tend to overlap. But what we tried to create was a space where everyone met on an equal footing and where there was no hierarchy. We didn't always manage to achieve this, but that was the goal. And we hoped that in this collaboration that people would then start forming overarching or very similar common goals and research aims, and that everyone would have equal access to the business opportunities that were made available to SWCTN. And what came up at the end, and as I hope you would have seen in the video, is that we had this kind of very big washing machine of ideas and collaborative practice, and we now have an established network that I sincerely hope will kind of lead to long-lasting relationships, not just only in this moment in time. So can I please have my next slide? Thank you so much. At Pervasive Media Studio, creative producing is definitely part of our DNA. It's what we do. We recognize that as we keep moving through different collaborative projects, that our creative producing practice as a collective and on an individual level as well keeps evolving. So as I said previously, it is indeed an iterative process. You can find us, on any given day, you can find us supporting, coaching, curating, communicating, engaging, giving a listening ear, giving advice, and hopefully listening as well to our research fellows, our prototype teams, and our colleagues. And in the context of SWCTN, I think what we registered was that the role of the producer was truly as an individual to spark connections across the network. And as I said earlier, hopefully to create long-lasting relationships. And at this point, I really want to shout out the Watershed-based team that worked on SWCTN, the fantastic Hannah Brady, Melissa Blackburn, Jaslyn Pinkney, Fern Dunn, and Joe Wildman. They provided SWCTN with creative producing skills, inclusion producing skills, marketing and comm skills, and also business development. Can I please have my next slide? Okay, so this is a really important one that we have been talking about quite a lot in Pervasive Media Studio as we've been thinking about our own internal inclusion practice. And I will say that how SWCTN started was to, the initial strategy in terms of inclusion was to recruit a diverse cohort. And I hope that we would all agree that it isn't just enough to recruit a diverse cohort into a space where individuals don't necessarily see themselves being represented in the leadership team and in the design team. And we totally accept the fact that we did indeed need a more inclusive and diverse team. That is something that we are addressing ourselves within our ongoing research strategy and in our practice in Pervasive Media Studio. What SWCTN did do was to bring in an inclusion producer, the fantastic Jaslyn Pinkney, who led on strategy around inclusion and accessibility. We also engaged the consultation of Dr. Adi Adelaine, and some of the recommendations and the feedback that we received from Adi's consulting is indeed included in our report, which, as John said, there are hard copies of, and you can also download for free on the website. But what I will say is that we are really at a phase in the studio where we want to go beyond simply acknowledging and reflecting upon the problems that we know are indeed present. We will be implementing Addy's recommendations in all of our research collaborations, as I've said previously, as a collective and hopefully on individual level as well, because we want to ensure that we go beyond merely talking the talk and actually gnawing away at the system and kind of enacting change as much as we can. And I would strongly recommend for people who are interested in, creative tech and in all kinds of research collaborations, so please do have a look at Dr. Adelaine's recommendations that are in the SWCTN Final Report and think about how you too can include them in your work going forward. So with that being said, I will ask for my last slide, which is just an acknowledgement and kind of thank you for including Watershed as part of SWCTN. Thank you to all our colleagues. We really hope that this is not the end of our working together and that in one form or another, we'll be able to continue our relationships. So thank you so much, everyone.
Hello. Thank you both. Can you hear me? Yes, you can. So that was wonderful, Faraha. Thank you very much. It's always wonderful to hear about Watershed and Dewey. But what I wanted to say was that one of the key aims of SWCTN was ensuring that we reached right across the Southwest. And Plymouth is currently fizzing with creative hubs and studios, including the new immersive dome at Market Hall. And the University of Plymouth were, of course, a key partner in SWCTN. And many of our workshops took place there. Mike Phillips is Professor of Interdisciplinary Arts at the University of Plymouth, and he's also Director of Research at IDAP.org, and he was a co-investor of Gator on SWCTN. And he's going to tell us more about Plymouth's part in SWCTN. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Melissa. As you said, I'm Mike Phillips. I'm middle-aged white male, sort of fading into a blank wall. Professor at the university, and I've been the co-director from Plymouth University's contribution to this incredible network. And as you can see, it's been an incredible pleasure to work with such a cool bunch of people. And this sort of rich transdisciplinary collaboration across the region and beyond has been really quite kind of influential, I think, in terms of the people we've worked with and the way it's kind of woven into certainly the city and the region. I thought, because we've seen some of the incredible work that's been done in the previous videos and the kind of infrastructure that has been run through the KE activity, the knowledge exchange activity, I would actually do a little video of kind of what happens next in Plymouth, the way we've woven this through the fabric of the city and the kind of connections that we've achieved in Plymouth and beyond. It goes global. So I've literally run around the city very breathlessly and excuse the sort of David Attenborough impersonations. It does feel weird. And also the overuse of the word dynamic for some reason. Anyway, there's a video now.
During the lifetime of the Southwest Creative Technology Network, Plymouth has undergone a bit of a cultural resurgence. This, for instance, is the box. It used to be the museum and art gallery and is now a state-of-the-art environment for archiving the preservation of culture. And is a linchpin in the new cultural quarter here, as well as the reformation and capital spend on new contemporary art galleries such as Cast here, with its first show after the COVID lockdown, and Capital Build, but also cool spaces like Ocean Studios here at the Royal William Yard, which is providing much needed studio space for artists and designers, and also a rich cultural space for mixing and collaborating. Located here with the redevelopment of the Melville building by Urban Splash to create another kind of cultural centre collab space here in the Royal William Yard. Now, all of these spaces have felt the touch of the South West Creative Technology Network. Part of SWCTN's legacy has been its entanglement with venues such as this in Plymouth. This is the Market Hall, which was reclaimed from behind the old Devonport Market Wall, which divided Plymouth and now unites groups of innovative thinkers, makers, doers, creative industries types that can co-work here to develop new content, new business models, new ideas, new productions, which can reach out across the world to deliver really cool tech, including, just through here, an immersive dome. This environment is not just the coolest in the Southwest, it's the coolest in England or the UK, Great Britain. It is in fact the coolest full dome in the world. The full dome environment is a kind of shared virtual reality. It's completely immersive with very sophisticated sound systems as well as multiple projectors. This creates a dynamic space where large numbers of audiences can share this consensual hallucination and engage with dynamic data, images, game engines, and of course 360 video, but also because of the nature of the flat floor, there can be performances, rave kind of environments, and the coming together of various forms of media into a dynamic and shared and networked media form. Full Dome UK is coming back to Plymouth for the first time since 2010, where it was founded. This is a network of professional full dome or domies who work together to bring these often very science-driven manifestations of data or astronomy into this shared environment. Full Dome UK 21 will be a network of other festivals from around the world in the Best of Earth screenings, which will bring together the Full Dome Festival from Jena in Germany, which is the Zeiss Planetarium, Dome Fest West, Los Angeles, the Dome Under Festival in Melbourne, to bring together the showcase of the best of full dome material from around the world. But in doing so, it also allows us to bring in different kinds of media formats, which have been very prevalent in the work of our fellows in Southwest Creative Technology. Certainly this kind of work here, where we're bringing large-scale environmental scanning to heritage institutions. This is Powderham Castle here, which has been scanned and incorporated into Full Dome, but also in doing so made it available for cross-platform environments such as VR headsets. As well as this resurgence of a cultural agenda for Plymouth, we've also got the investment in new technologies in 2 labs at the University of Plymouth, including the Digital Fabrication Lab and the Immersive Media Lab. This brings together a range of new technologies which allows designers and artists to carry on the mission of SWCTN with its 3 themes of immersion, automation and data. And here you can see various students engaging with these VR multi-user spaces. Augmented reality, as well as the use of rapid prototyping technologies to scan and print environments which can, until now, have only been imagined. The use of mocap to feed into more filmic, cinematic environments or game engine environments. For Plymouth as well, this has been very much about reaching out through knowledge exchange. So Southwest Creative Technologies knowledge exchange mission has been extended through the establishment of the bridge here in Plymouth, which is a resource for a permeable membrane between the university and the city and the broader region for the use of these technologies and the application within creative and transdisciplinary environments. Not least, EPIC, which is a project that's been underway for a while now in Cornwall, a European Regional Development Fund, which has explored the use of new technologies in the health sector, but also been fundamental in applying some of the techniques that we're using in SWCTN to network institutions, to network small companies, to network them directly with their communities of users. So the Southwest Creative Technology Network has allowed us to engage with practitioners and institutions here in Plymouth and across the region. And as with the international commercialization agenda for EPIC, we have also been exploring how these initiatives through micro grants and indeed the fellowships themselves provide localized services and support and new innovations. So, for instance, the EPIC has been exploring how these technologies can engage with local communities, particularly an area in Stonehouse here in Plymouth, which is multiple deprivations, and as with Devonport Market Hall, engaging with communities that would otherwise be underserved. The Southwest Creative Technology Network has entangled us with other regional projects such as the Impact Lab. And here, working across Devon, we've been exploring the use of environmental data to create immersive environments, particularly using the Full Dome here, which also ties us into the Market Hall and the engagement with the international community of immersive practitioners. So one of our routes for engaging further with the SWCTN agenda is areas in Plymouth like the National Marine Park, which you can see I'm located in now. It's the first of its kind in the UK. It's actually the Plymouth Sound, where we have a whole range of projects which are incorporating various sensors, ecological sensors, into this environment, onto an electric ferry here, for instance, which we've been doing through the Impact Lab. And of course, this is what you'd call a total immersion in data.
Okay, a little wet there. Yes. Thank you very much for watching that, if you have been. I just try to unpick some of those threads of how something like this incredible project has influenced, has leveraged relationships, and has allowed us to create an incredible intertwinglement, which will continue. So I will stop there and pass back to Melissa. Thank you very much.
I do not know how to follow that. I do not know how to follow immersive Mike Phillips. Thank you so much, Mike. Lots of people loving that film in the chat on YouTube. We are going to go to a break now. We're going to be back in 5 minutes, so we'll be back by 3 o'clock. And thank you so much. We'll see you in a minute. Hello and welcome back to Bees, Robots and Lights, a celebration of creative technology across the Southwest. We're here to celebrate the launch of our final report for SWCTN, which looks at all the things that we did during our 3-year programme. This is a chance to hear from our partners today, and particularly about how SWCTN affected where they are, the place where they are. So Kaleider were one of 2 crucial production partners on SWCTN, the other being Watershed, and Katie Keeler is exec producer at Kaleider, and she's here to tell us about the pivotal role that Kaleider played.
Thank you, Melissa. Just going to share my screen. So yes, hi, I'm Katie Keeler. I am a white woman. I have freckly skin, large brown glasses. My hair's in a brown bob with a white stripe in it. And I am the joint lead at Kaleider, and Kaleider was a co-executive producer of SWCTN. So I guess we co-designed the programme, and with Watershed, you could call us team operations. Kaleider is a production studio. We make artworks and we tour them all over the world. Sometimes our work can look like this. This is our show game, The Money, here at Sydney Opera House. Sometimes a little more like this. This is an installation called Pig. And here is Pig in Marseille. And we make artworks to invite audiences to think about the world. And for the Southwest Creative Technology Network, I guess that was our aim, to sort of hold space for people to think about the future and for people to think about creative technology. This is our building in Exeter. And I think it's safe to say that it was a favourite meeting spot of the SWCTN partnership. It was certainly really handy that it was right in the centre of the region. We moved into this building at the very start of SWCTN. Before this building, we were in another space and we had been building a creative cluster with art and technology as the focus. We'd been inspired by Watershed, and we really wanted a place in Exeter where we could join forces with other people to develop our work and to develop everyone's work. But without SWCTN, we'd never have had the confidence or indeed the time to move into this bigger space and to renovate it ourselves. We were able to lean into network development, and with 2.5 new people, we were able to reach out to our existing network and way beyond it, to bring people together and to get resource out to them. And a quick shout out right now here, please, to our team on SWCTN, the brilliant producer Charlie Tapp, creative technologist Andy Wood, assistant producer Catherine Stevens, and the freelance geniuses Becca Gill and Fiona Rourke. To launch our building in 2018, we put on Microfest. So it was a micro festival showcasing art and creative technology. And a number of fellows and prototype teams from SWCTN, from that first immersion cohort, were a fantastic part of the programme. And it was great for us to be able to offer an opportunity for them to have their work meet the public. And here's the building in action during Microfest. Now, the point of the next 3 slides I'm going to show you is that SWCTN was all about people. And the connections they made around the region. And many people reported that being part of SWCTN gave them increased legitimacy. It sort of gave them a platform to make collaborations with. And of course, they could also make connections with the brilliant people in the 4 universities. So here we have our micro bursaries. So we were able to offer a number of individual research and development bursaries. So this is alongside the fellowships and the prototype teams, and these are some of the Devon-based recipients. And you should look them up on the SWCTN website because you will agree with me that they are brilliant. And here we have our talent development cohort. We ran talent development workshops in person out of Exeter, being in the centre of the region for SWCTN, and that was great. Then the pandemic hit, And so we decided to work with multidisciplinary artist Fred Deacon and talent development producer Becca Gill to offer a 3-day intensive and immersive course about delivering online content. And this was right at the start of the pandemic, and it was quite inspirational. And out of this process, we commissioned 3 new experiences. We also took that learning and designed a process for this amazing cohort of people 16 to 30 years old called New Creatives, and that was a partnership with the Arts Council and BBC R&D and Calling the Shots. So these 3 slides are about the people, and SWCTN really did develop skills, knowledge and confidence in this region. I would have to say that Exeter, compared to somewhere like Bristol, is probably less developed. But of course, there's no shortage of talent. A number of the commissions and things that I've just been talking about came together in our automation showcase. And this was also where we launched 8 automation prototypes. But I'm just sharing this slide because I like the image on the bottom, which was because of the pandemic, we couldn't all be together. So we asked everyone attending to take a picture of themselves on their phone, and our AI interpreted it into a line drawing. We sent it to a Scribit robot, and the robots drew a massive mural of everyone at the conference on the wall here at Kaleider. So it feels to me as if a partnership between 4 universities and 2 producing organisations, 2 industry partners, who were essentially charged with much of the design and the running of recruitment, workshops and events, is still quite unusual. And as Kaleider is a production studio, and because I and my colleagues at Watershed would describe ourselves as producers, we started to pull together some of our learning about what that is, what a producer is. We brought in 3 producer fellows, Anne-Marie Culhane, Kerry Deacon and Christopher Hunt, and they looked at the role of the producer in art and creative technology innovation from very different perspectives. Now, with their learning, our learning on SWCTN, and I suppose our careers in art and cultural producing, we are going to publish a small publication in autumn with our learning. And this film, if you like, is a bit of a taster for that learning, and this is 3 minutes long.
Yeah, the role of a producer.
A producer is someone who is configuring resources around an idea to think strategically about how to make things happen.
A little bit of organisation, a little bit of logistics, a little bit of people, a little bit of growing empathy.
Kind of shape-shifting person in the middle of a project.
A producer is somebody that can see big picture, big ideas, and can also have care and empathy and time and understanding with people, with communities.
At Kaleider, we talk about the Kaleider producing triangle. At one corner, we have idea. At the other, we have context. And at the other, resource or money. And the job of the producer is to navigate these 3 things. So the point is that navigation and dealing with those forces to make something happen and to make it happen in the best way we can. Because we work with artists all the time, we bring a nerve for the new. We're used to holding a creative process open, even when it's terrifying.
Allowing the team to follow their creative instinct, but always bringing them back and putting them back on the rails and keeping it moving in the right direction.
So many things fall by the wayside because there isn't someone there who's trying to figure out how to get it into the world. You can have an idea, but it'll just get stuck if you don't make space for other people. A producer's really good at that.
I can see a world where the future of producing is about really open, free, bold, new systems of making things, where we understand what co-creation means in a real sense, in a real room. How do we get people who are vastly different expectations of the project into a room and get somewhere out of it?
It gives me a lot of satisfaction moving a project to that moment where it lands and it meets the public and they can experience it. And that's what one of my biggest motivators is, trying to find new ways for people to meet new ideas.
A lot of the work I've been doing in the last year or two has been a real focus on equity and making sure equity is part of that conversation. Organizations are rethinking things that have been handed down or legacy-like processes that they've used. They're saying that actually we can't use the same techniques to make different kinds of work. So we need to find new voices or new ways of doing things and enter into new relationships. And so my role as a producer has been more innovative than ever, because it is actually, not only am I listening to those folks and helping them have a conversation, but actually the power is shifted more into the small and the new, and going, how can we do things differently? And these big organizations are listening really keenly and going, okay, what does that look like?
The world really needs people who can draw together different ideas, translate across boundaries, be ready to kind of get their hands dirty and be quite pragmatic at the same time as holding great visions and values and ambition. A really good producer does those things.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's me. Can you see my slide okay, everybody? So after SWCTN, post SWCTN, we are now back to a small team, just 4 people, but the connections between people remain, and there is a huge amount of potential in the creative cluster in Exeter. And Kaleider Studios remains a really useful resource for people. So one of the legacies of SWCTN for us is that we gather people together about 4 times a year in the Exeter region to share ideas, to look at new kit, to make friends essentially. And that's called the Exeter Network for Art and Creative Technology, or ENACT for short. And we run ENACT in partnership with our friends at Tech Exeter, because this expands our reach and it significantly expands our expertise too. So this is one last slide of an artwork from Kaleider called Robot Selfie. And I've shared this because thanks to SWCTN, we have a greater confidence and strength in our partnership with technologists. And this shows in the artworks we're making as well as in the way we produce our artwork. So this is the robots again, but this time painting portraits on a massive 10 by 10 screen outside. And this is from Greenwich and Docklands Festival a few weekends ago. So my last slide is aimed to represent the warm welcome at Kaleider Studios in Exeter for anyone interested in workspace, making space, or to connect to ENACT, the Exeter Network for Art and Creative Technology. I'd say an emergent sector is an exciting one, full of opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Katie. And all those wonderful films will be available on the SWCTN website over the next week, particularly that lovely film of all the producers talking about creative producing. Thank you again. I am going to say that during this project, we had 2 knowledge exchange managers, Lloyd Breener and Adam Stringer, based at Falmouth University, who linked up practitioners and university researchers. And David Pryor is Director of Research at Falmouth University and a co-investigator on SWCTN. David.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Oh, this is asking me for all sorts of things. Let me just, this wasn't intended to happen. It's asking me for passwords as I try to share my screen. Trying to do that quickly. No, it's not letting me in, I'm afraid. We rehearsed this really well, didn't we? On Monday, I can't share my screen. Let me try another route. I'm sorry, everybody watching on YouTube.
It's there now, David.
Oh, it is there, is it? Okay, that's good to know. I can't see. Oh, this I can. Great. Right, let's move on to the first slide. Is that moving? Yes, it is. Thank you. So sorry about that technical hitch, everybody. Hello, I'm David Pryor. As Melissa said, I'm Director of Research at Falmouth University, and I've been a co-investigator on the SWCTN since the early 2020s, since early 2020, I should say, and only actually had the pleasure of having that warm welcome at Kaleider once, just a week or so before lockdown and the ensuing shift to everything being on Zoom. I say this by way of introduction, both to credit my co-investigator predecessor on the project, Professor Tanya Krywinska, who did all the hard work before me in driving the network in Cornwall, but also to introduce the theme that I want to talk a bit more about today of networks and their importance in the region in Cornwall, their importance in the challenge of sustaining national networks while living at the end of the country, which is no mean feat for us, but also their resilience in the face of an adversity like a pandemic, and the possibility that they hold, and actually in that ensuing shift towards Zoom, the way in which it made us rethink the basis of a network in a hybrid future, and the way, in fact, some of what's happened since the pandemic has somewhat leveled the playing field for us in Cornwall, enabling us to take part in conversations that we sometimes felt excluded from. Cornwall is famous, obviously, for its beaches and its skies, and for its traditional industries of fishing, mining, and agriculture, and for its rich heritage in language, storytelling, plein air theatre, painting, and the list goes on. But it does remain a low-wage seasonal economy, still overly dependent on a narrow range of employment opportunities, and with difficult transport networks and a high disparity of wealth. A significant aging population. We've got lots of challenges to face in the county, some of them more acute to elsewhere in the country. So creative thinking from within remains the county's greatest asset. And that's where the cultural and creative industries in Cornwall come in, with 5,745 people employed in the cultural and creative industries in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, 2,076 companies that have been made since 2018, 500 of those or 550 of those in screen-based areas, and over 500 new creative businesses. We can also see in there something that I want to dwell on a bit more in a minute. In Redruth, we see a tech hub, the top 3 tech hubs in the southwest, and in Penzance, these impressive statistics drawn out from Leicester about the significance of these in a relatively small town at the end of the country. Indeed, job growth in the digital and creative sectors will be the first and third highest of any sector in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. Between 2017 and 2027, 38.5% and 22% respectively. These are dry statistics, but they're really important for the county, and they're really important on the relationship I want to draw attention to between the creative hubs in Cornwall that predated the launch of SWCTN and the SWCTN activity that's happened since it was funded. So we can see here the existing creative hubs, 49 active creative hubs, none of them have quite the status of Kaleider, perhaps, in that wonderful talk that we've just seen. Many of them very, very small, but those were a network upon which SWCTN has been able to leverage incredible resource. So we see those hubs there, and in the next slide, SWCTN in Cornwall, the areas of activity, you can see a significant confluence there. This is, if we move on to SWCTN in Cornwall, we see Hannah Woods. This is, I mean, there's too many projects, too many numerous to mention them all, but a brief survey I think is in order. We see Hannah Woods' feminist computer game launched under the banner of Glass Ceiling Games, where the user can vanquish mansplaining and unsolicited pictures. It's a game about women being punk and tackles everyday sexism in a comedic and subversive and empowering way. And Hannah used the SWCTN research that she did, funded through the immersive call, to research into poetic mechanics for narrative effect and immersive experiences in a really fantastic game. Move on to Nora Lorway's project that made a fascinating relationship between immersion, an immersive audio project, and the equation between our contemporary technological and physiological fascination with immersion, and the condition of grief that she was researching at the time. Bude-based company Triangular Pixels did some innovative work on 3D mapping, which went on to receive further funding under the Immersion Prototypes round. So she was a fellow, they were fellows, and also had funding through the prototyping. And Cornwall-based recipients of the funding from the automation round also included Robert Dooley for his work on future car design, and also Paul Cheney for his project AIM, Agroecological Information Model, a prototype intelligent software tool for automating the design and ongoing management of human-scale agroecological food systems. Operating under the company name of Complex Earth, AIM used bespoke algorithms and machine learning to automatically design complex plant polycultures to match local conditions and local needs, allowing increased urban food production in existing green and brownfield sites with minimal inputs from water, fertilizer, herbicides and pesticides, and indeed human labour, a project that's been really impactful and goes from strength to strength. We'll see a short film in a minute about data duopoly. They created a visitor flow management system for venues, visitors, and so on that incentivizes visitors to visit less busy areas of a given venue, increasing revenue for venues while also gathering customer analytic data to assist in their long-term planning. They've won a slew of awards, and it's also good to see in this project something that came through Falmouth University's Launchpad program and went on to be funded through SWCTN and is now receiving further funding from elsewhere. We've talked a bit across today about the two principal rounds of funding through fellowships and prototypes, but in the last presentation as well, we referred to some of the stuff that's happened around the edges, and in Cornwall, that's been very significant. We've had these, what we call mini pots. For example, in Porthmere Studios in St Ives, it's been an iconic creative space for artists and students focused on the traditional fine arts since 1938, but a partnership that we had with SWCTN resulted in 3 funded digital art residencies at the studios, 2 of which gained follow-on funding to develop their residency work. At Falmouth University, moving to focus on the university itself from the region, SWCTN's had been invaluable to our commitment to acting as an anchor institution. For Falmouth, the region's success is very much our success, and the university's rapid expansion since the 1990s was envisioned and funded to create an anchor institution, with Falmouth becoming the first and to date the only university headquartered in Cornwall. The university has therefore grown and developed with the consent and support of our communities, including the very deep working relationship that we have with the council, local businesses, the LEP, and as I said before, that pre-existing network of creative hubs across the county. So the university of the early 2020s has been explicitly shaped to the benefit of local communities for economic prosperity, cultural benefit, and the enhanced educational and skills development opportunities that it provides. SWCTN's played an absolutely crucial role in fostering collaborations between the university and Cornwall-based organisations. And as a major SWCTN partner, Falmouth has strengthened its capacity to win funding bids that follow on from the work that we've undertaken to the benefit of the region and develop new creative technology spaces. It's also influenced other aspects of our policy, and we can now see some of the values of SWCTN writ large in our revised research and innovation strategy that takes us forward to 2030. One example of follow-on funding is in the WAVE project. It's a £700,000 project led by Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly LEP with Falmouth and Cornwall Museums Partnership on a project that will transform, we think, museum and heritage spaces in Cornwall. It's estimated that the WAVE will bring around 25,000 visitors to the county that weren't there before. I'm going to end by showing a video of data duopoly that I mentioned before. Hopefully this slide will just play when I click it.
Data Duopoly is a company that's based down in Cornwall on a mission to
Could you see that video when it was playing? No.
We couldn't see it. We couldn't see the film, but that's okay.
Shall I try once more? Can it be seen now? I think we'll need to leave the film.
Is a company that's based down in Cornwall on a mission to revolutionise the visitor experience at any venue worldwide.
So we have two products, and the first is a mobile application that the visitor can download when they get on site. This shows them where they are on the site and also how they get to the different exhibits. We then have another product, which is our analytics dashboard, which is for the venues, and from there they have a live heat map which shows where all the visitors are on site, and they can send offers from that dashboard themselves.
We're bored of the standard maps that we all see every day, and actually they need to be exciting and engaging. And we have gamified trails, and they're really targeted at children. They make the most of their day out. I mean, kids these days are always on their phone, but isn't it much better for them to be on their phone, but actually exploring the venue to have a digital experience to complement their physical one?
So we combine data and creativity into our product. Although we have all the data from the dashboard, it's really important that when we're collecting all this data and we're utilising it and we're analysing it, that it's actually exciting for the visitors to use the app itself.
We track where visitors are on site within a geofence, but it's all anonymised. So we don't know who someone is. All we know is there's a unique phone ID that's travelling around. And this is something that's at the very core of our product. We didn't want to be another Big Brother. We didn't want to be like CCTV cameras that are tracking people's faces and understanding who they are. We just want to give you value for your data and give something back. The visitor gets a better experience because of the data we're collecting, and the venue gets the data insights that can help with their long-term planning.
The big next step for us will be indoor positioning. At the moment we work in outdoor venues, just because we use the GPS signal. We really want to go indoor to really use our technology as much as possible. So that's our next big step, really.
As a result of the COVID crisis, we are now in contact with university campuses about using our technology to help students come back to campus safely and know where the busy areas are. So we would love to work with other universities as well, really to drive our technology forward and be at the forefront of not only the visitor experience, but also the student experience.
So thank you very much. Sorry about the technical hitch in showing that video, but thank you very much for the time to talk to you about what SWCTN has meant to Falmouth University. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David. That was wonderful. I really love that data duopoly project. It's absolutely fantastic. It's really worth looking at on the SWCTN website. So, so much creative work has come out across SWCTN, and a lot of creative work has come out of Bath Spa during the 3 years of SWCTN. And a new creative studio was also born at Palace Yard Mews, which is a really exciting development for the city. Rachel Pownell, who's now Innovation Manager at Bath Spa, was Knowledge Exchange Manager across the Southwest Creative Technology Network. And she will be rounding up today's presentations. Over to you.
Hello, hi, yes. So I am Rachel Pownell, and I was Knowledge Exchange Manager on the Southwest Creative Technology Network based at Bath University. Just to give you a physical description of myself, I'm a white woman, I have long white hair, hazel eyes, and I'm wearing a khaki jacket, sort of greenish khaki jacket, and a green and white pattern blouse, and I'm sitting here at the studio with sort of quite a white wall behind me and a little picture of something that looks a cross between a cactus and a flower. Anyway, I'm here to talk about the impact of SWCTN in Bath. Could I have my, could you share my slides, please? Hopefully the slides will come up soon, or do I just not see them? I can't see them. Can everyone else see them? Ah, here they are, perfect. That's the last, here we go. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so I want to take you back to the beginning of the project in the summer to autumn of 2018, when we first started the Southwest Creative Technology Network project. There was a launch in Bath, and then we didn't really get started till the autumn on the nitty-gritty, and the Southwest Creative Technology Network team in Bath, all two of us, myself and Kate Pullinger, who is the academic co-investigator from Bath Spa, moved into Spaces, which was Bath University's first city centre research and enterprise space, but it was based at a co-working hub. Spaces, and we were operating out of a small glass office there, and there were just the two of us, and a couple of other people would come and use the space every now and then. However, could we move on to the next slide? If we fast forward 3 years to this autumn, things have changed a little bit for us, and we have our one pandemic. 3 years later, we've got our own thriving enterprise and innovation and research hub based over 3 floors at Palace Yard Mews in Bath. It's got around 30 studio residents working on different creative technology network projects, from dancing drones to soft robotics to generative video and interactive therapeutic textiles. And I'm going to play a 1-minute film, which will just be a compilation of the kinds of projects that the studio residents are undertaking at Bristol University, and then I'll go back and show how we got there. Here we go. Here's the film. Lovely, thank you. So, so how did we get from that very early stage to where we are now? So I'm just going to go through, and I think I can't emphasise how instrumental the Southwest Creative Technology Network was in that journey for Bath. It was really, really significant. So starting off back in autumn 2018, we did lots of early community building, mostly around call outs for Southwest Creative Technology Network. We had, as well as the little office, we also had a great communal space that we could use at Spaces in Bath, and we held lots of events there. And we were lucky to have 3 academic fellows on the immersion fellowships. There's a picture of them there. So that's Anthony Head, Sharon Clark, and Coral Manton. And so that kind of got us started and got us going. Could I have the next slide, please? The next 6 months, so we're all about building capacity. We're still at Spaces, but the immersion fellows were joined by some automation fellows, and as well as having our 2 academic fellows, which were Ron Harima and Natasha Kidd, we also got 2 new talent fellows, which was really key actually, and those were Joseph Wilk and Ruby Jennings, and you'll hear much more about those later on. And as well as that, which again helped us build the network here in Bath, we had some small immersion grants or micro grants, £1,000, 9 of them, and we commissioned lots of different projects. Really, they were all from people who kind of missed out on fellowships or prototyping for immersion. So there was everything from exploring how to use immersive technology in town planning to working with Bath universities to create an immersive venue for Boomtown Festival. And then in the spring of 2019, the Bristol and Bath Creative R&D project launched, which is an AHRC funded project, a sort of sister project just based across Bristol and Bath. And that was really significant too, because between the 2 projects, support gathered around the need for this central hub in Bath to support and nurture creative tech in the city and across the region. And as well as that, sorry, I've forgotten, another really key thing was the immersive prototype. One was commissioned from Coral Manton, who was one of the immersion fellows, the academic immersion fellows. And that was an AR app called Shared Past Decoding Complexity. And it looked at ways of telling different and often complex stories around historical and cultural artifacts. Could I have the next slide, please? So that all brought us, all of that momentum brought us to being able to open the studio at Palace Yard Mews. So Kate Pullinger was the director, still is the director of the studio, and we got a studio manager on board in the form of Abby Brannigan. And so the mission of the studio is to have a space for micro businesses and students and academics and graduates from the university and creators from across the region, the Bath region, and to work on projects and ideas that focus on creative technology. I said before, we've got 3 floors. The first 2 floors are hot desking spaces. We've also got meeting rooms, and we have studio residents. So the idea was to have studio residents, and to help build that capacity, we had some more Bath small grants, automation small grants, and those were match funded with money from Bath University for fellowships at, or residencies rather, at the studio. So we had 4 of the 5 projects took up fellowships at the studio, so we were able to start building the capacity at the studio through the support from SWCTN. And you know, along with this, the network was expanding in Bath all the time. So could I have the next slide, please? Everything was going brilliantly from autumn. You know, 1 year on from the beginning of SWCTN, we had this studio up and running, and we were getting residencies. We had so onwards, we had 2 prototypes. One from the automation strand from SWCTN, from Ruby Jennings and Joseph Wilkes, and which was Playable Places for Urban Spaces, a soft robotics based prototype, and they based themselves at the studio, and they set up a new company called Little Lost Robots CIC, and they also got funding from Bristol and Bath Creative R&D for their project Stupid Cities, and along with that we were hosting events, and we were getting people, and we were getting lots of interest in the studio. Next slide, please. And then, of course, the pandemic hit in spring 2020. The official launch of the studio was scheduled for the end of March, which, of course, that's when the lockdown happened, and the studio had to close. However, you know, as with everything, we just had to adapt and change. And along with that, the Southwest Creative Technology Network, all the projects adapted and changed. So everything went online initially. So all the stuff at the studio went online in terms of support for the residents, and all of the SWCTN things like the automation prototype support had to go online, the showcasing had to go online, the data fellows, we had 2 academic fellows in that cohort, Matthew Sargent and Matthew Baker, along with an industry fellow from Bath called Annie Legg, who is a co-founder of Dot Project in the city. But things continued on, and a lot of the people that were funded by SWCTN from Bath got business development grants to help them build their businesses around the projects that they'd started with SWCTN. And we also had a Bath-based prototype called Broken Circles, which I think became Be More Circular, which was an app around looking at how to use technology to make things more ecologically sound in terms of business models. And along with that, we did some inclusion work to extend our network outwards, not just around the kind of creative tech community, but outwards into other communities that have more excluded from creative technology. Next slide, please. So that kind of brings us back to where we are now. So basically today we've got this vibrant creative ecology around creative technology emerging in Bath with the studio very much at the heart, and a lot of it has come through the work that was done through SWCTN. I think I don't know if I've said we've got 30 residents, and at least a third of those are directly from SWCTN, and a number have come sort of by indirect means through contacts that we've made through running this programme. There are lots of things going on. We're linked to lots of organisations. We've got Fringe Arts Bath, who are residents, as well as Forest of Imagination, that they're an organisation that run lots of events in the city. And we've also got a project called In the Meanwhile Space, which involves BANES, which is Bath and North East Somerset Council, along with the university and Bristol and Bath Creative R&D, along with Little Lost Robot, and the Arts Council are helping fund it to bring the life back into some of the empty spaces in Bath that have the shop fronts particularly, that have been affected by the pandemic. Which brings me neatly on to my next slide. And I want to, in a second, we're going to bring Ruby Jennings onto the screen. She is co-founder of Little Lost Robot CIC, and she was one of our SWCTN Automation New Talent Fellows based in Bath, along with Joseph Wilk. And she's very much involved with the In the Meanwhile space. And I want to talk to her now. If we could bring her on screen, please, and take away the slides. It'd be lovely. Here she is. Hi, Ruby.
Hi.
So Ruby, it's really lovely to see you. Did you want to introduce yourself and just give your sort of brief audio description, and then we'll do a little bit of a Q&A.
Hi, I'm Ruby Jennings. I am a quite stressed out looking, slightly middle-aged white person. I don't generally look this tired, but it's been a rough week.
Okay, and so I kind of want to talk to you really about your journey through SWCTN and kind of where it's taken you and where you are today and where you're going next with things. So the first thing I wanted to ask you was, how did receiving the funding from the SWCTN Automatic New Talent Fellowship and then the prototyping funding, how did that change your practice and affect your career trajectory?
It was a really incredible creative leap for me. So previous to that, I was working as an immersive set and theatre builder, and I was doing a mix of outdoor set shows, working for large scale festivals, doing big sculptures, things like that. But everything was very much commission based, and everything was underpaid. And I had 2 small children, and it was just getting completely untenable. I wasn't really sure if I was going to be able to continue in my career in the way that it was working. And I'd always been interested in mechanisms and automation to the point of obsession, but I could never get anyone to teach me or give me the skills to like make that leap into digital technologies and to physical digital interfaces. Having the money to just spend the time on just slowly researching something and getting it wrong again and again and again, having the space to creatively fail was actually the most powerful thing, because that taught me so much about the process of building in a completely new way. And it gave me the chance to really read and think about the methodologies around automation, and also the impact of automation on culture and the impact of new technologies, especially things like 3D printing on our world, especially on our just on like people from a lower socioeconomic background like myself, and just on our communities in general. I'm very interested now in the use of new technologies and the abuse of new technologies, but also the ways in which we can empower ourselves as local communities to use new technologies for good and to take ownership of our own spaces.
And we'll kind of move on to that in a minute, because that kind of links within the meanwhile, doesn't it? But first of all, can you just talk a little bit about maybe the impact that being a resident at the studio in Bath has had on your work, and with Little Lost Robot, and maybe creating playable places and surviving the pandemic, which I know has been quite difficult.
That's a lot to fit in one go. The studio is brilliant. Myself and Joseph were very keen to join, because finding somewhere that was accessible for Joseph, who's in a wheelchair, was really hard. And we needed somewhere large where we could test our robots and work together collectively, because building and then programming a robot is quite a complex thing, and it requires quite a lot of time in an open space, and that's very hard to find. So pre-pandemic, it was the most brilliant thing ever. But also, even during the pandemic, which obviously had a massive impact on our practice because we couldn't meet up, it was still a really great thing to have the network, even if it was just over Slack, to know that there was something to lean back into. And I think I've been a resident for two and a half years now, and it's been an absolutely wonderful experience for us, because it's like something you can lean back onto that's really meaningful. It's a space you can go into to really connect with other people and have meaningful conversations about quite complex topics. There's good coffee. And they're very welcoming to new ideas. I go in there in the morning and it's a really brilliant place to actually go and just feel calm and centered on my practice, and to remember how to verbalize my more complex thoughts, which, having two small children and working out of an estate in Peasdown St John, it's sometimes not quite so easy to do that here.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. So, sort of looking forward now, so bring us up to date and looking forward, I just wondered, first of all, how Playable Places is progressing post SWCTN, and also what your new project, particularly in the meanwhile, what you're currently engaged with, and how you're taking all of that forward.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Playable Places has gone really well. Since post the SWCTN automation funding, we've had 2 rounds of Arts Council funding to develop the project and to work with people from different communities to look at how we can use robotics in a meaningful, socially engaging way. Because of the pandemic, we were really struggling to find places to tour our work and to take our work out to test it on the public, because our Arts Council funding was around this idea of like testing things before we take it out on tour. And normally we'd tour work and we'd just take it out and we'd go and do Greenwich and Docklands, or we'd go and do Leeds Light Night, and we wouldn't need these pre-testing. But because we were doing really complex interactive work, we needed to find a safe way of trialing that with an audience that was meaningful, so we could look at what worked and what didn't. So because we couldn't find an outdoor space to do it, and there wasn't anything happening because of the pandemic, we went to the council and talked about using a shop space. And I think, Rachel, you actually introduced that conversation to start with. Sorry, those are my kids. That was a really positive conversation that we had with the council. In the end, they gave us a huge, what used to be 2 Georgian villas knocked together right in the middle of the city. And we ended up programming about 3 months worth of work in there alongside the stuff from Lost Robot, because there were so many other artists and creatives who needed to get out and get work out. And we had just this prime moment where we could open up a gallery. We got really good audience numbers, and actually the final exhibition we did, which had, I think, 4 SWCTN members displayed their work. So there was Rachel Smith from Automation, there was Dave Webb, there was Joseph's automated painting work, there was our Playable Places work, and Charlie from Lark Hall, who's also a studio resident. I'm not sure if he got SWCTN funding or not, but he's certainly part of that network. We ended up creating an immersive gallery show, which was, yeah, it wasn't what we expected to do, but it came out really well. Because of that, and because the time we had in the shop was so good for both the council and the local communities in Bath, we've been invited to open up a more permanent space within the centre of the city. And at the moment, we're just looking at possible old shops and old offices to see where the best venue space might be for us, which is really exciting long term, because Bath doesn't really have an arts centre, not of that kind anyway.
That's fantastic. Well, I think we're probably going to have to wrap up there. It was a bit brief, but we're trying to stick to a schedule here. So thank you so much, Ruby, for talking to us, and I hope that's given a kind of taste of what SWCTN has kind of done for Bath and the creative technology ecology within Bath. Thank you. I'll hand back to John Dovey now, who's going to do some final words for us, I think.
Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel and Ruby, for, giving us just the most amazing case study in what a successful network can do, from setting up and helping to set up, I should say, really, the Palisade Muse network, and then what that actually means for an individual creative person in the case of Ruby, and the kind of extraordinary journey that it supported her to go on, leading to what sounds like a very cool long-term development in Bath. The thing that I've really been struck by listening to all of you speak this afternoon is something to do with the way that this kind of work gets funded. You know, if you're a funder and you've got government money to spend on doing this kind of creative development work, quite often, historically, what you do is you either fund buildings or institutions or projects or companies. And that money goes into those siloed pots, when actually what everybody really wants is for all those different bits, the companies and the institutions and the projects and the people, and to work together to create a milieu, to create a scene, to create a cluster, to be collaborating together. And I think what we've proven in this project is that it's possible to fund what I would call the connective tissue of the creative economy. How do you put money into channels that can connect all the necessary bits together? Many of these companies existed beforehand. Many of these sites, Kaleider in Exeter, obviously the amazing range of work going on at Plymouth University, some of the work that was going on at Falmouth. We didn't invent any of these things, but we allowed them to connect together and increase the performance of the connective tissue across the whole place in order that they each could strengthen themselves and push out all this really interesting, I would say, fruit, a harvest of amazing projects that you've had a flavour of this afternoon. Though we haven't really been concentrating on our outputs, we've been concentrating on the impacts that it's had on the network as a whole and trying to articulate this idea of how money spent in the right place can connect the right people together to produce the right kinds of outcomes. And I hope that you've been given an animated exemplification of that idea this afternoon, because I think it's really quite a hard thing to do. And I think we've been working at trying to work out how to do it for quite a long time. And I think this might be the best example that I can think of so far of how we've been able to do that work of bringing all the different elements together to make all of them stronger and to produce some outputs. I mean, it really is amazing thinking of what Kaleider now does in Exeter with Enact, what's happening in Bath Spa with the Palisade Muse Studio and the other developments that we just heard of from Ruby, what's happening in Cornwall, and the way that Falmouth University has been influenced by this network, and the amazing stuff in Plymouth. I think we should all move to Plymouth, basically, from what Mike was talking about earlier on. Plymouth sounds as though it's really humming at the moment. And again, I know we weren't responsible for all those things, but we've somehow been able to contribute to them and oil the wheels and make sure that those things have got little bits of money where they needed it, where they needed to get something over the line. That kind of flexible networking operation is what we've been able to do really well, I think. And I think the proof is in all of those places. So if you want to know more, please download the lovely report. It's got much more detail than we can supply now. And the website, the Southwest Creative Technology Network website, will be continuing to be present. It's got documentation of all of our projects. Every project that we've made has its own film on the website. Plus there's loads of other content there that's useful to people who want to work in this area. So go and check that out. That's also where you can find the report. And thank you to everybody for making this such a great project. It's been really, I think, an interesting experience for us all. And without being too self-congratulatory anymore, thanks again for everyone for giving us your hearts and souls and sharing your ideas, imaginations and vision over the last 3 years. And we will be back. SWCTN will ride again. There will doubtless be some other iteration of this in the future. So watch our space and get in touch with us. Tell us what you think. Tell us what we could do better next time. Tell us what you'd like to see next time. Get in touch with all those places in Exeter, in Bath, in Plymouth, in Falmouth, here in UWE and the Pervasive Media Studio. Come and tell us what you think we need to do next, and we'll go about trying to raise the money to make sure that can happen. See you again next time round. Thanks a lot. Bye.